Attention,
A new contract.
you have your attention. It's 5:30, it doesn't seem like it, but it's 5:30, we'll call the March 2020 City of Rolla Planning and Zoning Commission to order. You should receive the minutes. Madeline sent out. Any corrections or changes? If not, I'll rule those approved as printed and distributed. Next item is report on city council action. Tom?
Just had one item from the last meeting, and that was that modification of the subdivision for the Quick Trip. The city council did review that and approve the ordinance. They actually had the both readings at the meeting on February 24th. So they did approve that. I still haven't gotten the plat to be signed and recorded for that subdivision at this point. That was approved.
Any questions for Tom? Okay, the next item is a public hearing. We have one tonight. It's the Michael Liu rezoning a property from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to C2 General Retail District at the property addressed at 101 South Rucker. Tom?
All right, hit a button. There we go. There we go. So this is located at the corner of Rucker Avenue and Black Street. The property is highlighted in the red. This building you may recognize, it used to be a church. We're in that area. The property is currently zoned C1, which is a neighborhood commercial. It's surrounded to the north-ish by properties that are also zoned C1, but it's also adjacent to the property on the south, which is zoned C2, which is the general retail, which is what is being sought with this rezoning. It's also kind of across the street from property that's zoned C3, which is highway commercial. So it's the middle of a commercial area. The future land use plan designates this particular property as being appropriate for community commercial uses. Community commercial would include the requested C2 zoning. It also has it adjacent to, on the north, properties that would be appropriate for neighborhood commercial. It's also adjacent to properties that at that time would have been appropriate for low density residential. However, those are houses where they have been removed. And so pretty much the whole area is appropriate for commercial. This is the street view. As I said, it was previously used as church. Church use has ceased on that site, and the property has been out for sale for a few months now. The applicant is the person who owned the Kyoto, wasn't garden, but the Kyoto restaurant where we did a rezoning for not too long ago at that site. And so he's looking to move the restaurant into this building. So just to summarize, the rezoning should be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the surrounding uses. It's not located adjacent to any residentially zoned property or actual property. Now the street right away was zoned residential because it's within a certain distance of residential. And there was some property nearby that's a house, but it's not zoned residential. But it's not adjacent to any property that's actual lot that's zoned residentially. The proposed restaurant, it is allowed in the current zoning district, the current C1 zoning district. It's also allowed in the proposed C2 zoning district. However, the applicant is requesting this rezoning to allow for alcohol sales to occur at this restaurant. The C1 district allows restaurants but doesn't allow for any alcohol sales to occur on the site, whereas the C2 district removes that restriction. Do you have any questions for me before you move on to the public hearing?
The church did own the property directly across the street north. This only affects the old original church property. The church built that multi-use building across the street. It's used as a tanning salon now, but Mr. Liu just bought the one property. That's all we're dealing with, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? Okay, if not, we'll officially open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this issue, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will officially close the public hearing.
When you go to vote on this, remember you've got the normal three alternatives. You can find that it meets the criteria for approval of the rezoning and recommend approval to the city council, find that it's not an appropriate use for the property and recommend the city council not approve the rezoning, or if you need more information, table it to a certain date.
Any questions or comments? Discussion?
Tom, is the building being, are they just going to put the restaurant in the existing structure, or are they going to tear it down and build new?
He is intending to remodel as much of the existing structure as possible. There's a portion that's not going to be salvageable, so they'll have to remove that portion. Not sure exactly what they'll do in that area.
Okay, thank
And
you.
there's an excavator sitting in the yard right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we send this request to the council with our recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any final discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bowie,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Monty Shields,
Yes.
Stephen Shields,
Yes.
Schweikert.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. We have no new business, we have no old business, we have no committees. We do want to announce that the MML meeting's Thursday, the 26th, and if you haven't already sent in notice to Madeline, please do so at your early convenience. I think there's a deadline. It should be a good meeting. I've attended some of theirs in the past and found them very informational and good. We will have the election of officers annual on May 12th. You can add that to the agenda, Tom. We're required annually to vote for officers, so those of you who want to get your literature and stuff ready.
Yard sign?
Yeah, yard signs or whatever.
And even after that.
I keep thinking I might get out of a job, but I don't think it's gonna happen, so. We have no outstanding committees, and staff, Tom has 2 items he wants to share with us, so I'll turn it over to Tom.
So, wanted to talk a bit about the format of the agendas that we've been using. So this is the current agenda, the one, in fact, the one from tonight. Just wanted to bring attention there, we had already made a few changes to the agendas a few months ago. I'm not sure if you noticed, but we added a snazzy header to the top. We also added a thing at the bottom to say when the next meeting date was, so that if you needed to table something, you know exactly what date that would be. And tried to make a few other changes, but it was recommended that before we get too crazy with it, that at least talk about it with the full board to see if there's any desire or not desire to have any further changes. So just wanted to go through them and go through them one by one and see what the temperature is. So just the first thing, we talk about, we have on the agenda the report from recent city council items. So I just want to ask the question, is that something that you need? It seemed like 99% of the time cases are approved by the city council as, or disapproved as is recommended from this body. It seems like it might be a good idea to, if there was some sort of difference, to send an email out to everybody, or it's not super common for cities to have this on the agenda and have a report on that at each meeting. So I just wanted to ask the question, I mean, is this something you're going to get use out of, or not? Anybody have any opinion?
I think it'd be a good idea to difference between what the city council decided and what was the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, but other than that, I'm not sure just to say, yes, they did what you said to do is really useful. I would like to know if there was a significant difference, though. And why, perhaps?
And honestly, I think that's why it's on our agenda, so when there is a difference, we're sure as a board to all hear it. And it's a public record, we're just a public meeting, so it's put in public record that we all got that. If we're sending it out in an email or something, you know, that information may not be public, that we received it or not. But I personally, and like her, I would like to know if the city council has a difference of opinion.
Otherwise, I don't know why it would need to be.
We have a vested interest, so we spend a lot of time on it and we send it, so, otherwise I wouldn't know what they did, unless I watched it on TV or came and attended the council meeting, so, I find it useful, but it doesn't take much time, so.
I like it too.
Okay?
I think it's fine either way, but I think it's especially good to know if there was some kind of a difference in what we recommended and what happened.
Okay, I'm not hearing much on the opposite side, so we'll keep it as it is. And then there's this item that's always on the agenda, but I don't think is ever utilized, and so I'm not sure if it needs to be on the agenda, this other business/citizen comments. It makes it seem like anybody can just show up at the meeting and get up and talk during that time period about any subject they feel like talking about. I don't think that's something that, fortunately, nobody has tried to do that. I don't think it's something that would be I think, a good idea to leave the door open for. I think that should be just removed from the agenda. If somebody from the public really wants something to be on the agenda, the appropriate avenue would be to petition the city for a text amendment to the code or something like that. But to just get up and talk about anything that's not necessarily related to the planning commission, I don't think is appropriate.
Well, as chairman, I could always shut them down, but if it made the effort to come to the meeting and they had something they wanted to share with us, I would think we would welcome that. It's never been abused in the 10 or 12 years I've been on it, but
Occasionally abused on the city council.
well,
Well, I
and
think
here
the city
again,
council,
Man.
a lot of city councils remove that from their
Yeah.
agendas to be able to do that for that reason.
we've never had a problem, and as chairman, I guarantee you, I could shut them down, so.
You guys done it before?
I've done it before.
Good reason
I,
to
I,
continue.
to me, a citizen makes the effort to come, I would welcome them, if, especially something that we're dealing with. We could always delete it later, but I don't see a problem with it.
Tom, if they did have something that they wanted to bring forward to our attention, would they have an option to come to you to be placed on the agenda? Is that what we're advocating here, that they come to you?
I think it would be a better way to do it if somebody had some sort of subject. That way it is something that is on the agenda, or could be, it might be something we can deal with at the staff level, you know, so that get it to answer their questions, so they don't have to come to the planning commission to use that time.
Do these, are these agendas posted on the city's website so the public can see them ahead of time?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Posted in the hallway upstairs, I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong, it used to be.
It is, yep.
I was just thinking if a citizen didn't know they could come, then there's a reason we've never seen them. But if it's posted like this and we've still never seen anybody.
A lot of times, things are time sensitive too, they don't realize they want to speak till
Yeah.
right before it happens, so, I'm not sure they would have time to get to you, and they get the letter, it's within 185 feet or something.
Well, if they get a letter, they're here to talk about something that is on the agenda,
Yeah.
which is always fine. But this thing at the bottom is something that's just not on the agenda you weren't planning on talking about.
We can always remove it later if it becomes a problem.
Okay. So then this is included at the in the packet, kind of an example of kind of what I was thinking about for a different way to set up the agenda. And so I wanted to just go through a couple of the thoughts behind it. First one is adding a section that has the names of all the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've tried that with a couple of the other agendas, and we kind of like it because it kind of helps to know who's here and who's not here just by glance, instead of trying to remember who it is. There's so many of you. And anybody have any opposition to that? And then, just a suggestion, I don't really have a super strong feeling for it either way, but I kind of feel like old business ought to be talked about before new business. It's a very common way of having things set up on the agendas. But also just think about it, if the old business is going to be something that was probably tabled at the last meeting or unable to be heard at the last meeting or postponed or something like that. So it'd be somebody who's probably been here once before and wasn't able to get their case sent forward. And so I think it'd be good to, if they've already been having to deal with coming to a meeting once, to get them in the door and out the door as quick as possible.
That is the way the city council handles it, isn't it? Old business and new business.
Yeah. Do we have any opposition to that? All right. And then, let's see here. So just kind of in that vein of dealing with not making people wait unnecessarily. It doesn't take a whole lot of time necessarily to review the minutes or to do that report on the recent city council items. We're only talking about sometimes 30 seconds and sometimes 5 minutes if we had an agenda like we had a couple months ago. So not a huge deal or whatever, but to me that's also information that the people who do come to the meeting aren't necessarily interested in. So why have them wait through that? So my suggestion was to basically just to kind of flip that to the back of the agenda.
My idea of that, take care of housekeeping business first before you get into the business of the meeting. That's my opinion.
I think Robert's Rules of Order recommends you do the minutes, one of the first things you encounter, I think. I could be wrong. I bought a new book, but I didn't pull it out and research it this week. So.
Well, you aren't strictly bound by the Robert's Rules of Orders,
Well,
but and I will admit it is fairly common for the minutes to be first.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not hearing a whole lot of support for that. So. And then I'd say the most controversial item, though, is what to do with the cases that we do have. This board is a little unusual compared to most cities in that there is both items that you open up for public comment and items that you don't need to open up for public comment, such as minor subdivisions being kind of number one among those. Most cities of a certain size don't send minor subdivisions and things like that to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for review. Most cities do that as a staff level type thing. So for the most part, they're only doing things that you need to open up for public comment. So there's not really a need to differentiate between the two. And then as far as calling it new business or calling it public hearing, really it's kind of 50-50 out there as far as what people call it. But it is fairly unusual to, right now the agenda is differentiate between the call. New business would be like a minor subdivision, then public hearing will be like a rezoning. Is very unusual to need to differentiate between the two, so you don't really find any cities that have the two. So I don't know. My thought was just put them together under new business, or you'd had to call it new business if they're together, and then just differentiate between the two, like when I have the PowerPoint meeting, or just open up all of them to a public comment period. It doesn't hurt to open it up to, if somebody were to come, now we don't send out public notice for a minor subdivision, but it wouldn't hurt to, if somebody did get wind of it, wouldn't hurt, because it is on the agenda, so they might get wind of it, but it wouldn't hurt to open up for somebody if they did have comments. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
I'm in favor of keeping the public hearing because it gives you a process and a procedure and some decorum. It's not a problem like tonight when you don't have an overflowing crowd, but when you have them all the way out in the hallway, you need some structure and some in public hearings. And also, the city council is required, and so the people are gonna have to, most people don't come or are aware of what we do unless they watch TV. They're aware of the process, and I think it just helps them to go through it here, and then they'll see what's gonna happen at the city council. I'm in favor of keeping the public hearings, but it allows me to have a little more control over what happens. And I've noticed that people are a little more respectful to the rules and follow the procedure. But you're just saying have new business and not have public hearings, is that what you're saying?
I would say you'd open up for public comment the same either way.
Well,
But,
here again, that you open up,
because you see what's happened a few times, we've got them mixed up when we've done our agendas between having new business and public hearing, got them mixed up and then had to do the agenda over again. It gets complicated trying to keep the two separated, and why separate them?
So then each item, you would open it up to public comment?
That would be my recommendation, just open up for a moment if somebody has anything to say. Like I say, in minor subdivision, we don't send letters out, but it is on the agenda. So if somehow the neighbor wanted to come in and maybe they reviewed it and they found something that it doesn't meet the code and they wanted to make you aware of it, that, we wouldn't have figured out somehow or another. And otherwise, they don't have an opportunity to bring that up to you. I mean, they should come and talk to me if they found something like that.
I'm on the opinion that the old Ozark saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I tend to agree.
I do too.
And that's 4-year time, but we did have an engineer come in once, and at the end of the meeting, under citizen comments, he said, I just want to commend you on the way your meetings are conducted. He had attended 2 other local, within the region, city planning and zoning commissions, and I think both of them were a zoo, so he was very complimentary. He said, I appreciate the way you guys run your meetings. So here again, if it didn't broke, don't fix it. I don't mind change. You made a lot of changes already in the format, and most of them I've agreed with. Some of them, like the format of what we do. As you notice, I can't speak for the others, but I'm fairly old, and the older you get, the less you like change. So I'm not against progress, but I'm resistant to change if it didn't need it. So.
Who's old?
Yeah, I'm old. Probably the senior. I don't know.
No, you're not.
All
I'd
right.
say I am.
Well, I think I got what I needed out of this, so there's a couple things it sounds like we're okay with, a couple things we're not okay with, so we'll make those changes as we discussed.
The census?
All right, so we are now March 10th, in about 5 or 6 or 7 days, I'm not sure exactly what the date is, but you'll start to receive a postcard in the mail. This is kind of a PSA for anybody who's listening, not just you all. The postcard will give you a code to go online to the census website or to call in to a toll-free phone number to self-report for the census. Census is very important. It's used for a lot of different things. 2 biggest things would be for representation for government and the legislature. And the second biggest one is it's used for a lot of different types of grants, funding, because some things are based on population, and some things are specifically based on what population the census comes up with for your population. There are other outfits out there that will estimate a population and whatnot, but there are a lot of things that are tied specifically to the census. So it's very important that people go in and report their information to the census. I tell people there's really no reason not to do it. The questions they ask you, other than my phone number, are questions that I would tell to anyone who came up to me and asked me the questions. They do not ask for your income. I do not ask any questions about your citizenship. I do not ask for your social security number. They don't ask for any money to be sent back with thing. And so they do ask for your phone number. The reason why they ask for your phone number is so that if they discover some sort of oddity with the way you reported it, say if you reported your child at your house and your child, they found them, they also reported themselves at some other address, they may call and try to figure out what the deal is with that. So they do not sell your information. They've never done that in the past, and they do not plan on doing that in the future. And so basically what this will go is in a couple days, start getting postcards. The idea is to get as many people as possible to just go ahead and self-report, because that's much cheaper for everybody. If they don't hear from you within a certain period of time, they'll send you another postcard and ask you to do it again. If you don't do it, they'll send you another postcard and ask you to do it again. If you don't hear from me again, then they'll send you the old-fashioned paper version. There's a lot of people who don't really want to get online or don't want to make the phone call, so that they will eventually send the paper version. And if they still don't hear from you, then they've got to actually send a person out to your house. That takes a lot of time and a lot of resources to go out there and to each person's house who won't self-report. And if they still can't get a hold of you, then you won't be counted. And that harms your community if you decide not to be counted for some reason. Because as I said, it affects funding in a lot of different ways. And I guess that's it. Did you have any questions?
Your job description, that's one of the other duties as assigned?
Yeah, apparently.
I remember John Peterson had.
So Tom, does every individual have to report, or can I do it for my household?
They're generally expecting you to do it for a household.
Okay.
So somebody who's kind of like the head of the household will put together for people who are in the household. Now it gets a little more complicated from that, and when you have like non-traditional type places like nursing homes and things like that, that's a whole different way of doing things. But for the average person who lives in a house with a family and whatnot, you get one census response. I also wanted to say the city has partnered with various agencies across the entire county and some cities and governments to form a complete count committee with the idea of trying to do some measures to help increase the amount of people who will go ahead and self-report or report through other means. And you've probably seen a thing come in your utility bill a couple months ago, a little flyer. We've purchased some banners. They're going to be hung in some locations throughout the town. And like I said, we've been working with quite a few agencies to help them with the response as well.
Hope you get the word out. It's very important. So, any questions? Any comments from the commissioners? Any comments from the audience wishing to speak? They come forward. Seeing none, we're adjourned.